So, Jai Shri Mataji to everybody. Jewels of Sahaja Yoga program continues. Here we have a new jewel today. That's Manish Singh, originally from Punjab, and a very veteran Sahaja Yogi since late 1970s. We have the privilege of having him over today to have just an informal chat and discuss how basically wanted to know more about him so people can know uh, what he has been through with his experiences in front of Shri Mataji when she was there in her Sakar form. And his journey is in a short way, he can describe how he came to Sahaja Yoga and how he was enamored and he was attracted to this idea of becoming a Sahaja Yogi and how he has traversed through these years. And so, please, Manish, I will not waste any more time and over to you. You are in USA right now, as I can see.
Thank you, Sanjay. Good to connect with you. So I think I was really looking for something or someone. Of course, when you're searching, you don't know exactly what you're looking for. And, one is hoping that one can find a real guru or somebody who can guide you. Of course, one never expected that one would find Adi Shakti herself. That was totally beyond one's concept. I didn't even have a concept that there is somebody by the name of Shri Adi Shakti. Um, but when it was time, and this was March of 79, I had done my little um, travels around journey, in my search for, something higher. And met a few gurus and all that. I don't know, somehow, I don't know, maybe there was a innate um, consciousness or wisdom which kind of didn't, I didn't get stuck anywhere. I would kind of see them, I would kind of maybe even try a little bit, and then I would just sleep. So in my house, it had become a joke. अच्छा तो this is इसका एक नया फैड है, देखते हैं कितने दिन चलता है. And I was in Delhi University at that time. I was attending college at Sri Ram College of Commerce, and then I'd actually started my first year of law because I wasn't sure as to what I wanted to do. So there were a couple of my uh, college friends, some of them went on to other things. One of them became the Indian ambassador to the US, Navtej Sarna. So they were preparing for the um, IAS and IFS, and I wasn't too sure whether I wanted to do it. But I was like, okay, need to bide some time. So law kar lete hain. Because I mean, if nothing else, it'll come in handy for something. And so I started law at law faculty in Delhi. And at that time, used to be in Delhi University. And so there's a place in Delhi University called Gandhi Bhavan. And I used to go there every morning to do Hatha Yoga. So, I used to do the asanas every morning and all that. Till the day when one saw Shrimaji's poster. And it said Shri Nirmala Devi, and it said, I think the word was Kundalini Jagran. So I wasn't too sure what that meant, but I was like, I will go. And it's amazing. I'd been going to that place for a good 3 years plus, maybe 4 years, and I'd never seen Shrimaji's poster till that time. And she had been coming there every year. So it is like when the time is destined, that's the time you will come. Before that, it will not happen. And very coincidentally, my horoscope, Indian parents are very great at getting horoscopes made. So my horoscope said that when you're 22, your life will change. First time I met Shimaji was on the 13th of March, And the 16th of March, I turned 22. So it was so precise. It's amazing, but I mean, somehow it was accurate. Um, I told an interesting story that I got my realization on the 13th of March to begin with, but maybe not fully. And Gandhi Bhavan is like an amphitheater, so it's open on all the sides. And so one, when Shimaji said, Acha, apna, put your hands towards me, and then you felt the cool breeze. And she said, whoever's feeling the cool breeze, please put up your hands. So one was feeling it, one put up one hands, but looked around to see where is this wind coming from? I mean, you've never understood or even aware that there's such a concept कि आपके अंदर से ठंडी हवा आएगी. It's totally unfathomable. And here it was happening. And so you're like, oh, I'm sure there's a catch to it. And and it actually stopped. Um, but whatever I had heard and experienced was tremendous. And so, of course, I was sure that I will be coming back. In those days, Shimaji used to, she had set up camp at 10 Ashoka Road. Every time I go to Delhi, I drive past 10 Ashoka Road because that has tremendous memories for me. And so there was a um, tent put up in the gardens because these old houses, they had lots of garden space and all that. And every day, Shimaji used to do a morning and evening program. So on the 15th of March, I remember going there, and that day, of course, when she said to put your hands towards her, I had no second thoughts, nothing of the kind. It was like it was just pouring inside me. It was just so tremendous and so wonderful. It was like you had had this internal bath, which, you can't believe that there's something like this, but it was just happening. And those days, it was a little different that towards the end of the program, everybody used to line up and then we used to go to Shimaji's feet. And we would put our hands under her feet and put our head on her feet. It was totally different. And so, can you imagine that you are at her feet and God knows what she's doing, but literally, you could say all your karmas, everything were finished right there and there. Only thing is that you didn't believe that that had finished, but you were feeling this tremendous oneness with this all-pervading power of cool breeze, this Param Chaitanya. It was just pouring into you from every direction. And so I remember some of the people come to me after the meeting to say, so let me see if you've got your realization. And they were looking for some cues, which were physical cues. I remember in particular, Gregoire walks up to me and says, let me see if you've got realization. He's looking at my eyes and he says, oh, they're dilated, so you've got it. So those were some of the signs which people used to look for. But my first two guides and support in Sahaja Yoga were, one was Avdut Pai, and Avdut was from Mumbai. I used to think that Avdut is younger than me, but we recently, I think 4 years, 5 years ago, found out that we're both the same age. And Avdut, of course, was from Mumbai, and his father, Uncle Pai, was also a Sahaja Yogi, and he's told his stories in many different ways, in different formats, and different podcasts. Very sweet, very dedicated. A Sahaja Yogi who's really dedicated to Shamaji and her work in totality. So very fortunate to have him as a friend and a guide. And then there was Tony from England. These were the two people who kind of took me under their wing, to kind of nurture me along in learning what is Sahaja Yoga. Very fortunately, right in the early days, only I think maybe 3-4 days after I'd got maybe 5 days after I'd got my realization, um, there was an uncle from Mumbai. His uncle was Uncle Karaka. He was actually a Parsi gentleman, and he was one of the few who had come to Sahaja Yoga at that time. And I asked him, I said, Uncle, will it be possible to meet Shimaji? I had no expectations, but I mean, I was like, what's wrong? What's the harm with asking? And he said, okay, let me see. And he came back and he said, okay, you can go and see her, but you need to come out in 5 minutes. And so I went inside in the room. Shimaji was sitting there, and Anand and Sonu, they were little people. I think Anand was maybe 4, maybe going on 5, and Sonu was maybe 6. They were playing around, and Shimaji was sitting there. And Shimaji, I went and, bowed at her feet, and she said, how are you feeling? And I said, I just feel wonderful. And she just smiled and kept quiet. And so there wasn't really much of a conversation. I was just sitting there and I was just taking in those vibrations, which were heavenly. And Shivaji was also sitting there. And actually, for most of the time, now when I reflect back, her eyes were closed. And both Anand and Sonu were playing around. So very dutifully, after 5 minutes, I got up. And Shivaji said, "Kahan ja rahe ho? Where are you going?" And I said, Shimaji, they asked me to come out. She said, nahi baithe raho. So I just sat. And I have no idea how long I sat. But that was my first one-on-one. Again, like I said, there wasn't much conversation. It was just feeling that oneness with her. I can't even explain it. But it was that tremendous thing. And it was like I've come home. Um, so the beginning days, one was feeling this tremendous power, and I could feel that inside me, I was changing. And, if somebody asked me to quantify it, um, I wouldn't have any way of explaining it, but it was just a tremendous happening. And it, it didn't even occur to me to ask the question that who is Shimaji? I was like, yeah, she's there. She's a mother. I'm in divine bliss. Who cares about anything else? But very interestingly, at that time, there was an article which came out in the Illustrated Weekly of India, which at that point of time, this was today. Illustrated Weekly was one of the premier magazines in India, and it had this title, I'm God Shrimataji. So it was a little bit of a tongue in cheek. But for me, it was just a confirmation of what I was experiencing. And so when I read that article, I was like, so she's God? I was like, yeah, I just knew it. I just knew it. I mean, without knowing it, I knew it. And so it was just this confirmation right away. And it didn't change my reverence to her because I already had that for her. Because what she had done was unbelievable. I could have never imagined it, even in my wildest dream, that something like this could happen. But it had happened. And now, this article, which was supposed to be, a little bit of bordering on sarcasm, and then we know what happened to the Times of India, that, they got shut down for 6 months, and, all kinds of things happen. But when you're foolish and you think you're smarter, and human beings have this propensity and tendency to think they're very smart, oh, this is like, these days you have sansani khabar. So it was like one of those things. But the sansani khabar, at least for people like me who had maybe just come, it was a confirmation. And for that, one was extremely grateful. And then the search journey started. Um, Soon after, I was trying to figure out what I wanted to do. People said to me, hey, listen, you have an affinity for food. You enjoy cooking. Why don't you go into the hotel business? And I'm like, who'll go into the hotel business? I have no idea what the hotel business was. But strangely enough, the Oberoys um, had put out an ad for management trainees. And this was the same year, 79. So I think this was probably around maybe June. And I applied. And they every year at that time, they used to take, I think, 20 trainees. So I think from a pool of about 8,000, 9,000 people, whatever it was, um, I was one of the people who selected. And just to say to you, um, once I took to something, I took to it fully. I never went half measures. So this was interesting. When I got my realization one day in the early days, maybe in the third or fourth day, whatever it was, when I went to Shrimaji's feet and she asked for the kumkum, and I used to wear a turban at that time, and she made a cross on my Agya Chakra. Guess what? This
Wow.
must have been quite a sight for people in Delhi University that there's this guy who's wearing a turban with a cross on his forehead and he's walking around the campus. And I couldn't care less one bit. And for a good, I think 5 days or 4 days, I washed my face, but I didn't take off the cross. The cross was on my forehead. And so even when I interviewed with the Oberoys, I didn't make the cross, but I put on the bindi and I went for interviews wearing a turban. So, one of the people even asked me, what's this about? And I just said, I'm a follower of Shri Mataji Nirmala Devi, and somehow they had known about her. So somebody tried to make a mark, but another person corrected him right there and said, oh, no, 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 she's a great lady. And, she's the wife of C.P. Srivastav, who was at that time the Secretary General of the United Nations Maritime Organization. So I had full, complete faith and surety in myself and that confidence that, I represent something much higher. And that's how this journey started, of course, from there. Then, there were not so many young people in Delhi at that time. I think I remember the Mathur family. There used to be Uncle Mathur, who was a professor at Delhi Hindu College, and his three daughters and one son. They used to come to Sahaja Yoga. But beyond that, there weren't many younger people. But what happened is maybe one started a little bit of a new wave in the sense that um, people who were maybe you might call them a little westernized, they came to Sahaja Yoga and they started doing Sahaja Yoga because they saw other people similar to them who had taken to Sahaja Yoga. So, it was no longer that, you had to be extremely Indian just to accept Sahaja Yoga. So that started changing. There were all these people who came in. There was, I can tell you from that time, there was Gagan, then there was Karan, then there was, um,
Harsh.
Wing Commander, huh? Harsh, huh?
Harsh.
Wing Commander Verma's daughter and son-in-law, Indravardhan, and I forget his daughter's name, but all these people came. Then her brothers came. So it kind of, Shrimaji creates those links, and so it started to move in that direction, and many things started to change. I remember we went to the Shibir in Lonavala. I think it was 1981. I think, yes, it was 1981. And so at that point of time, there were these three young boys. I was the oldest. And so strangely, we all came from um, the Sikh faith. And so um, I think there used to be a Sahaja Yogi that time. I think his name was Modi. And he came and said, would you like to offer something? And we offered this ardas from the Guru Granth Sahib, Main hu Param Purukh ka dasa, dekhan aaya jagat tamasha, that I'm the servant, not this one, sorry, it was Tum Thakur Tum Pe Ardas. Tum Thakur Tum Pe Ardas, that, O Lord, God Almighty, I very humbly pray to you. Jiva Pindit Sab Tumra Ras, that this whole um, creation. It's just your play. It's your rasa. Tum mata pita hum balak tere. You're the mother and father, and we're your children. Tumri kirpa me sukha ghanere. That in your benevolence, all the blessings of the universe are there. Koi na jane tumra ant. Who knows your beginning or end, O Lord Almighty? Unche se uncha Bhagwan, the highest of highest. Tumri gatamit tum hi dana. You only know what it is and what it's not. And then it goes on to say, tum sutradhari. I mean, at that point of time, one had started understanding the sutar is the Kundalini, and of course, in the Granth Sahib, the sutar is written by Guru Nanak Sahib as well as Kabir Das Ji and all the great saints of that time in that part of the world. I think the northern side of India, it could be, they called it the Surati. It's called as Surati. And the vibrations just went, everybody became so silent in those 3 minutes. It was unbelievable. And that was the first time we were experiencing, because we had heard this all our lives, but we never experienced the grandeur of it, the majesty of it. And there it was pouring. Of course, Shimaji was there. So, obviously she's the Sutar, she's the Sutardhari, so it was all just manifesting. So those things happened. And then, of course, in those days, she never used to ask us. We were told, I've chosen a bride for you, and it's time for you to get married. And I mean, just for children these days, I would say this, these days, even in Sahaja Yoga, they're 28, 29, 30, 32, 35, and they're like, what's the hurry and this and that. In those days, by the time you were 22, 23, you were matched and you were married off. And there was a reason behind that. The reason behind that was that, focus your attention on one person. This world is a little crazy. And I mean, people are like, aren't you in a relationship? Even in India here now, do you have a boyfriend? Do you have a girlfriend? Aren't you in a relationship? I mean, what is this nonsense? So it was like, okay, that is part of life. It's not the beginning and end of life, but focus on one person. So I think it was around 1981 or so. She told me, I've selected this girl for you from Mumbai. And I said, very good, Shivaji. And so at some point, one met her. And then in 83, we were the last group of people to get married in New Delhi. And so we got married in New Delhi. And I had even forgotten how the weddings had happened. But I happened to look at a video. So it was very interesting that that point of time, Shivaji did one havan in the middle, and there were 16 couples around the thing, and we all walked in one circle around that fire, and Shivaji is sitting right there. These days, now, of course, when you see the weddings, there's a little separate havan kund for each person. But that year, she did all 16, and there were 16 all around one fire. From my perspective, it was like she's there. The whole universe is there. What more do you want? And so then once went into one's, how would you say, the next part of your phase of your life. That was your marriage. Of course, career was going on, all the rest of it. One thing which I had to mention.
Grihasthashram.
Grihasthashram. And I think, Sanjay, it was somewhere around 81, 82 that you came, right?
Yes. 81, I met Shri Mataji.
Mm-hmm.
And 84, I got my realization. So there was a gap, because of this wedding that happened for my sister, with Harish.
Right. And then you guys went to London, and I think you stayed at the ashram. That
Yes.
also happened
I
somewhere
went to
around that.
London. That's when I got my realization from Mother, 82, 84. And that is
Okay.
those are the amazing times. In
Right. That
fact,
was
I met you, I think, around the same time in 85 in Calcutta. I think this is where we met.
yes.
And that's
Yeah.
when Shri Mataji initiated me to start writing poetry and doing music. And
Yeah.
all I remember is, really, I remember about you is that we are in the same car in Jaipur with Shri Mataji on my Fiat. And then that episode happened when the Rajesh's Mercedes could not take mother to, because I think something happened to the driver, and Shimaji said, "You take me now." And she sat in the front seat, and you and Radhana and Mrs. Pardal were at the back seat. Do you remember that?
I remember, but I don't remember Aradhana there. I do remember that we were Auntie Pardal's house
Yeah.
in, and it was a coincidence that I was actually in Jaipur on
Yeah.
official work, on business. And my task was to actually look and kind of find some, um, I think it was to find some hotel sites, restaurant sites in Rajasthan. And so, of course, we were staying at the Pardal's house. Shimaji came and she was there, and then she was building Pratishthan at the time. And, you know, I mean, the very idea that you take a whole Haveli
Yeah.
and you deconstruct it and then you re-put it back together. I mean, these were things which Shivaji did. And not many people could think of those things. And if you remember, we traveled through Rajasthan. I don't know where all we went. We went in the interiors, and where Shivaji bought that Haveli, um, it was it was an abandoned place. I think there was just maybe one or two houses there, and there was this majestic, beautifully carved building in the middle of nowhere. And Shivaji looked at it and said, "Acha, isko khareed lenge." And then, of course, the whole um, uh, Haveli was dismantled, I think, piece by piece, and then put together, and then brought to Pratishthan and put together over there. Um, I don't know if you remember that during that time, we stayed one night at somebody's Haveli. At that time, this Haveli concept hadn't really started off. This thing became later that it's become so popular, and so many people have converted their old houses into, Airbnbs or boutique hotels and all the rest of it. But we stayed at this particular place, and for some reason, the Kuvar or whatever it was happened to be there that day, and he heard about Shimaji, and he came and said, "Ke mere kuएं का पानी खारा है. Is there something that you can do about it?" And I remember, I'm not sure whether Shimaji put her hand in some water and gave it to them, or we washed her feet, and then that water was put into that well. I don't know
Yes.
what the outcome of it was,
Did
but
you know the name of that Kumar? His name was Mahendra. And he
no.
was running behind the car when we were approaching that Haveli. And Shimaj said, "Let's stop here." And then he came and he put his red shawl at her feet. And then he went all down
Mm.
to do obeisance to Shimataji like he does to the Devi. And Shimataji said, "Look, he doesn't even know me, and how he is so surrendered to." Did you know that he had a temple where he took Shimataji the next day, and Shimataji was giving vibrations to the idols of Ram, Sita, and Hanuman. Ram, Sita, and Lakshman. You were there when she was just
I'm sure I
all
was there, but I,
photographs.
I see.
Ah,
That's
yeah,
why we need people to fill in the blanks.
yeah.
I,
Please carry on.
I have the memory of staying at this. I remember the water bit. I remember Shimaji sleeping on this bed. It was literally like a platform, and it was like an elevated bed. I remember that. And Shimaji slept there, and Auntie Pardal was next to her. I think we were sleeping in another room, whatever it was. And I remember during the time driving through, and you had made these songs, but they weren't complete. And
Yes.
so you were kind of humming them along, and then Shimaji said, "Acha ruko." And then she took each one of them, and one by one, she
Yeah.
kind of completed them. And they
Absolutely.
became these songs which now the whole world sings. And many times, even in the songbook, it says Sanjay Talwar. And I've told many people, Sanjay, no difference to you in a way, but I said, you guys have no idea. These songs were actually written by Shimaji herself. Then they
There
looked
you
at
go.
us. I said, yes, it's true. I
Yes,
said, you can ask Sanjay himself,
yes,
and I mean, all the one, Durga Adi Shakti, then the Saat Janam Hai, Isiliye,
yeah,
all those songs.
yes.
One of my favorites was um, हमें तुमसे प्यार कितना ये हम
Vimana.
जानते
Correct,
अ,
correct.
मगर जी
This she
नहीं
made in the
सकते
car. You remember
या
she made it in the car.
या मगर जी नहीं सकते सहज के बिना and
Absolutely.
I somehow when I sing it I always go मगर जी नहीं सकते श्री माता जी बिना um, so
Yeah.
so many things and but coming back to I got married in 1983
Mm.
around I think it was around 1984 I living in a family I used to live with my parents at the time and my father was fond of the bottle so he used to have not drink heavily but he used to have his drink every day before Sahaja Yoga once in a blue moon I would join him but he had to have his drink of course when it came to Sahaja Yoga that was out of question it didn't even have the desire to even look at it but it occurred to me at that point of time and my first child had already been born, and Shimaji had named him Shri Kal. And when she named him that, I actually said to her, Shimaji, what does it mean? you know, and she said, तुम्हारे बाप को भी तो खुश करना है. So it's from Sat Shri Kal. And then she said, Shri is me. And Kal, it's my time. So he's Shri Kal. So he's a harbinger of that time. I said, okay, Shivaji, thank you. We were so ignorant. But, she was always so kind and would teach us these things with so much, like a mother does. Only a mother can teach and has taught Sahaja Yoga the way she's done it. Nobody else can do it. So we learned so many things along the way. And then I went to Shimaji and I said, Shimaji, I think that maybe I should live separately on my own. And she just looked at me like that and she said, you've come to Sahaja Yoga to make, not to break. The conversation was over in less than 5 seconds. I never said a word after that. She said what it is, and we listened and we obeyed. There was no thing but Shimaji, there was no such thing. I also remember before that, actually, on one occasion, I walked in because those days there weren't so many people, so our access to her was different. Of course, we just didn't walk into her room like that, but we were allowed to walk into her room. So of course, one would be always sensitive to whoever was staying with her as, to attend to Shimaji. But even they knew that, Shimaji was okay with us coming. So we would go. And so so those things were permitted. And because they were permitted, so one, you know, in a sense, you could say took advantage of it. So that also happened. But it was wonderful. And so we were able to sit with her and talk to her about so many things. Some people ask me about this story because when I came to Sahaja Yoga, as I said, I used to wear a turban. I came from the Sikh faith. Um, Luckily for me, my parents weren't overtly religious. So we used to go to the Gurdwara, I think twice a year, one on Guru Nanak's birthday, one on Guru Gobind Singh's birthday. That was all that was asked of us. But when you went to the Gurdwara, sitting for more than a half an hour used to be a challenge because you didn't understand what was happening and you didn't experience anything that you was doing. So it was a ritual. It was like, okay, you're expected to do it. And so you did it. But I think it was around 1980, towards the latter part, I said to Shamaji, I feel a little pressure in the head. And she looked at me and she laughed. And she said, Ke wo tum pehante ho na? So because you really tie it very tightly, I mean, people don't understand it, tie it so tight. So it literally does have an impact on your head and brain. Plus, being in a turban, which is a very majestic thing, but at the same point of time, it kind of, you know, traps all that heat over there. Um, and she just laughed at that, and nothing was more than said. But when she said that, that was enough for me. And so I did a little bit of a drama, and I said to my parents, I'm experiencing this tension in my head, and something's bothering me, and all that kind of stuff. So my mother actually set up a appointment for me with a neurologist or a neurosurgeon. And so we went and he examined me. He had a little hammer and he tapped me around, and then he came back and said nothing wrong with him. So um, I was like, okay, this is not working. One was just being sensitive to the fact that for a Sikh, wearing a turban is a big deal. So, didn't want to hurt one's parents. But at the same point of time, I was a very determined guy. Once I decided something had to be done, then I would do it. So, um, Shimaji was going to go back to London. I think this was sometime in 1981, probably, I think it was March, I think. And she was staying at Sarvapriya Vihar, uh, Sada Nidhi's house. And so she went to rest in the afternoon. And when she went to rest in the afternoon, I said to Harsh, I said, okay, we're going. He's like, where are we going? I said, going to the barber shop. So Hoskas Market was close by. So we went to the barber shop and I had a haircut. And when we came back, at the time when Shimaji woke up from her sleep and she came outside the room and she looked at me, and I went and offered my pranam at her feet, and she smiled and she said, today Guru Nanak is very pleased because you're the first one who's done it, knowing he's doing the right thing. It wasn't to say that everybody has to take off their turban, but it was to say that you don't need these appendages to say that you are a Sikh. A Sikh means what? One who's learned from the Guru. And whatever has been put together in the Granth Sahib, you've imbibed it. And so if you look at it, these were the 36 great saints of that time. Baba Farid, Namdev Ji, Kabir Das Ji, Dhanna Bhagat, so many others. So, I mean, to say that your definition as a Sikh is because you wear a turban, that's not accurate. And at that time, I remember at a later time, she said to me that, at the time of Guru Gobind Singh, he was fighting against Aurangzeb in the northern side, and Shivaji Maharaj was on the western side of India. This was required because people were being cowards, and this fellow was like, if you don't convert, I'll kill you. And so they would succumb. And Guru Gobind Singh said, I'll give you a form that you can't hide. And what was the form he gave? He said, I'll make you into a Singh, into a lion, so that you're brave, courageous, and you also look it. Because he is a Devi worshipper, because on Shimaji's 75th birthday, had the opportunity to spend about 6-7 months with her in Noida. What do you give Adi Shakti? So I went to I think Bangla Sahib, and I got the Guru Granth Sahib in Hindi, and also got the Chandi Diwar, which is literally the Durga Saptashati, written by Guru Gobind Singh in Punjabi, but it's literally Durga Saptashati, and offered it to Shimaji. And when I offered it at her feet, she took it and she put it to her heart. And then I recited this verse that मैं हूँ परम पुरख का दासा, देखन आया जगत तमाशा, हेमकुंड पर्वत है जहाँ, सप्त श्रृंग शोभत है तहाँ. That I'm the servant of God Almighty. I've come to this world to see his play, that this peak Hemkund, where it is in the Himalayas, it's surrounded by these beautiful 7 peaks. Kari mein tapasya bhari. I did a lot of meditation and penance. Mahakali ka aradhi. And when one said that, and Shivaji looked at me and said, wo to hum hai. So why don't they understand? I said, Shivaji, a little bit beyond my understanding as to why they don't understand, but it's a fact. This is a fact. Even when they do the ardas, it starts with Pratham Bhagavati ko simar ke Guru Nanak Dev Tyao. That first you meditate, you embrace, you ask Shri Adi Shakti, that's the Pratham Bhagavati, Pratham Bhagavati, that's Adi Shakti, that you start with her and then you put your attention on Guru Nanak. So it's so evident and so much there. I mean, what is it that people don't understand? I mean, that's a little difficult for me to fathom because for me, it's as clear as day. So all the work that Guru Nanak Sahib did, all the great saints did in the north, it's time for it to come to fruition. And what's the fruition? The fruition is for them, for people to take to it and become that. That's really what it is. And, I think maybe it's time now that, Sanjay, maybe through these podcasts, these things, this awareness is coming. Because some people reached out to me and said, we had no idea that, you had a Sikh lineage. And I said, no, very much that. I mean, it's a funny story how my name came into being because Manish is not a very Sardar name, right? But for whatever reason, during my childhood, they do namkaran karte and that never happened. And so for the longest time, I think till I don't even remember, maybe in the 6th grade, 7th grade, something like that, whatever it was, I was called as Dicky Singh. And then I went to my Bhua's house and she was appalled and she's like, your father is useless and he hasn't even done your name. So she did a little ceremony and, they opened the Granth Sahib and whichever is the first letter, you're supposed to be named after that. So my letter was Ma. And, I'm sure that people were thinking this, that, that. But by that time, I think I was 10, 11, and I was like, no, I'm going to name myself. And so I just liked this name of Manish, and I said, okay, it's going to be Manish. And so nobody really fought me on that. But to give it a little bit of a Sardar thing, my father said, okay, Manish Preet Singh. So I had to give into that. And I said, okay, Manish Preet Singh. So right now, when I write my name, I write Manish P. Singh, because otherwise it just expands out like that. So that kind of thing.
It sounds like Preet. Preet is love, nothing but love, right? So,
True, true,
yeah.
true. But at that point of time, it was like just to give it that Sardar thing, because you would either be Manish Pal Singh or Manish Preet Singh. So the Preet came into being, and I'm fine with that. But just to say that we have these conditionings, you know, um, and there's no need to have conditionings. I mean, Man is the one who's like the master of his mana, the Ishwar of mana, right? So I'm like, I hope that in this lifetime I become that totally, because
Manda
that would
Ishwar.
be the actualization of one's realization, right? In totality,
Yeah.
right? So
Yeah. Anish, one thing, uh, while listening to you only, I'm feeling so many vibrations. And you see, because even the aura around you, even the glow on your face is says volumes about your reflection of the glory of Shri Mataji coming onto your persona. So beautiful. I am just enjoying that so much. But tell me, I had one question. There, there are so many instances where Shri Mataji has performed many miracles. Like people are very, enchanted by miracles in one's life. And sometimes they show you, I don't know what they come for. Either you ask for them or they're supposed to reveal unto some sort of a hidden question within you that they just appear to just can you say something about that? Maybe some experience in your life like that that brought you some
Yeah.
solution in your life.
I
Yeah.
think many things, I mean, it's come to the point where when it happens, you're like, okay, another thing happened. But I remember one of the things, Sanjay, and it's kind of associated with your family. We were in Calcutta, and this was during Navratri. And if you remember, we were staying with Mr. Mahinder Jalan,
Yes.
Shri's dad. And the Lions Club was hosting Shrimaji over there. And it was your sister-in-law, I'm forgetting her name. Um, and
Rajni.
she was really that I need to get a miracle photograph.
Yeah.
You remember that? And
Yes.
Shrimaji was eating, and then they took the photograph, and that photograph came, and you could literally see Shrimaji as um, Shri Kali or Mahakali, eating all the boots and all the stuff. I think that was one of the first ones. But of course, before that, one had experienced these tremendous vibrations. And I can tell you this, that um, was very fortunate that actually for months together, I have been in that absolute state of bliss. And I remember in the early days, I think I'd been in Sahaja Yoga a few months, and Delhi gets hot. And so, the exams didn't happen till sometime in May. And by that time, Delhi is hot. And I would be walking in the sun, and I still felt like there was this, um, I don't know, it was like this column of coolness which was around me. And so it just wasn't bothering me one bit whatsoever. And so one became cognizant and conscious of these states. And I was like, yeah, okay, this is also there. I'll tell you of another incident of the power of a surgery. And I was in surgery at that point of time, I think maybe just about 2 or 3 months. And you mentioned about this friend of ours, Harsh. Harsh, when he came to Sahaja, he and I were in the same college, and he saw Shumaji's photograph at my desk, and he said, "Who's she?" And I said to him, I said, "This is who she is." And I said, "Come with me," and I took him to the meeting at Gandhi Bhavan, and he got his realization. But his father at that time was extremely unwell. Those were the days when heart trouble was like major trouble. These days, you have bypass, you have this, you have that, all that stuff. None of that was there at that time. And so I'm originally from Simla. That's where I grew up. I grew up in the mountains. And so summer vacation came, and of course, I went back to Simla. Harsh was in Delhi because his father was at the military hospital in Delhi. But, from time to time, we would talk, and those were the days when you had trunk calls. You didn't have easy access like we're doing right now with Zoom and all the rest of it. And so I said, Shimaji said that when you're in collective consciousness and you put your attention on anyone, it can work. And I had full confidence in that. So I remember sitting in Simla and I gave myself a bandhan. I took a bandhan and I raised the Kundalini, and then I wrote his father's name on my hand, gave it a bandhan, and I started working on the father sitting in Simla, and the guy is in Delhi. And after a little while, I don't remember how long, I felt like things were opening up. They were just opening up. And somehow that day, Harsh and I spoke, and I said, Harsh, your father should be better. And he said, how do you know? I said, I just know. I didn't tell him that I sat and worked on him or anything. It wasn't me working on him. It was the vibrations, the Param Chaitanya, which was working on him. Of course, you were a tool in the process. And he called me back and he said, Manish, the doctors say that my father's condition improved substantially. And so that was a proof to me that when you're in collective consciousness, as Shamaji said, you're connected everywhere. It works. So that was the first proof. And that's where I started getting that confidence of a Sahaja Yogi that, when you put your attention to something and you're connected to her, the first condition is you're connected to her. If you're not connected to her, then you can do whatever, you can say all the mantras on earth, everything, nothing's going to work. But when you're connected, then that Shakti is flowing and she's doing everything. So this, is something I remember distinctly happening. And this was a confirmation for me that Sahaja Yoga actually works because it was manifesting. So that's what happened over there. Of course, along the way, there were so many other examples and other incidents which happened. Um, tell you of one incident that happened in Ganpati Phule. So, Ganpati Phule, when we started going to Ganpati Phule, was a very remote area. Hardly anybody was there. MTDC was a highlight. And so Shamaji used to stay over there. And, there were arrangements made for the tour and everything else. And so the beach was right there underneath, and everybody wanted to go and swim in the waters. The waters were nice and warm, and it was a lovely thing. But Shimaji, the sun used to get hot. This was even in December. And so Shimaji actually told everybody that I think it was maybe 9:30 or 10, something in the morning, that after that you're not to go to the thing, because especially for people from the West, they can't take the sun, and but people will do what they do. So some people took some liberties, and I remember they got some stingrays came and they bit them, they stung them, and then they came out, and that thing came to Shivaji, and it was like, yeah, the whole universe listens to her, except human beings and even Sahaja Yogis. So that was one thing. But then what happened is, in the same time, there was a group of people who took liberties and they got totally sunburnt. I mean, literally, they got so burnt that their faces were like black. And there were, I don't remember, but 5, 6 of them, they were brought up to Shimaji's cottage because they were so badly burnt. And they came and she looked at them. And as a mother, first they got a little bit of a scolding, that I've told you, why don't you listen? And all the rest of it. But then, of course, the compassion of the mother comes in. And so she told at that time, Uma and Nima were attending to Shimaji, and she told them, go and get my saris. So they went and got these, you see most photographs of Shimaji, not the puja ones, but the other ones. Shimaji used to like these khadi saris, which were white saris with this border, could be green, yellow, red, orange, whatever color. And so they got 6 saris or 7 saris, depending on number of people over there. She called all of them, gave them each one sari, said, go inside her cottage, go inside and wrap yourselves with these saris. And so they wrapped themselves with the saris. I don't remember exactly how long, maybe half an hour, 1 hour, something like that. Those saris absorbed all the heat and they just fell to pieces. They just fell to pieces. They became shreds. And guess what? The saris just fell apart, but these people were cured. All that burns which they had were gone. So that is the compassion of Shri Mataji. And, it was, we were watching it and it was like this big drama going on. And, it was, by that time, I think we'd got used to seeing these things. And so we were like, yeah, but, with Shivaji, anything is possible. And that was what happened. And I think it was around the same time, at that point of time, in the evening when we used to have the programs, because we didn't really have a set place, they had created this like a mud platform on which Shivaji would go and sit, and the flooring was mud. So they used to put maybe a dari or something on there. And people, all the Sahaja Yogis would come and sit down, and they didn't have really much for decoration, but these rows of leaves, torrents, just rows and rows of those leaves. And this musician was performing, and Shivaji did not like anyone giggling or making noise or mocking or moving when a musician was playing. You sat, if anything was there, you just had to get up. You had to do it very discreetly, but she did not like it. And so nobody moved. But that evening, there were a couple of ladies who kept giggling. And one of them was Auntie Prem. And I'm like, Auntie Prem, you know better. We're sitting behind Shimaji. What are you doing? And she kept pointing up. And so looked up, and it was unbelievable. The torrents were moving in perfect harmony with the music. I mean, as the music tempo would increase, they would move faster. And you know how in Indian music it suddenly comes to a stop? They would just stop. This went on all night. I don't know, again, I've said this before, I don't know if anybody has it on TV, maybe on video, maybe they have, I do not know. But this show went the whole evening, and Shimaji then looking around, sometimes then she'd have that half smile. She's looking because, a show's going on and she's created it for her children and she wants them to enjoy it. And so this show went up. Towards the end of the evening, when it finished, suddenly there was this huge Trishul which showed up in the sky, a trident. And it was just blasting vibrations. And we watching and we like, oh, she's doing this cosmic show today. And then when we drove back to MTDC, right above the cottage where Shimaji was staying, the moon was above her cottage, and it had a perfect halo of, I don't know, there weren't clouds in the sky, but there was a perfect halo which was absolutely visible right above that. So when she wanted, she could just do things like that, you know. So many of those stories and so many of those incidents that happened. Um, I've also talked to some people about, and I'll tell you also, and I'm sorry, forgive me, I don't remember the exact date when this happened, but one year in Ganpati Phule, uh, it was the last day of Ganpati Phule, and I think this was in 1997. And so my wallet, which had the train ticket in it, I left it in the room, and then whatever happened, I came back. I couldn't find that wallet. I literally turned the whole room upside down, moved the mattress, checked my bag, checked all my clothes, checked everything I could find. I couldn't find it. And I was like, okay, ab jo hai, so hai. One of the things good with me is that I don't get overtly disturbed, what will happen? And I'm like, what will happen, we'll see. And so nobody else was in that room. I locked the door and I went off to sleep. The windows were closed, everything was closed. And I woke up in the morning, and that wallet was sitting right on the bed, which I had turned upside down. So where it came from, I have no idea, but it happened. Um, so she has her own way of doing things, and you just have that confidence that, my mother's there, she'll take care of it. What's the big deal? So those kind of stories I can share with you.
This is real what he says, aankhon dekhi.
Huh.
In her presence, in her physical presence being there in the world, these things were become like just it used to happen like almost every day.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, I mean, I've seen so much of it in my life. Of course, I will need another podcast to tell about myself one day. But there is one thing, Manish, before we can conclude this session. You've been in Sahaj now for more than 45 or 47 years, if I'm not wrong. And I'm just about 2, 3 years behind you. Okay. And so we've grown up together in this, and more or less, I have a very beautiful memory of you cooking for Shri Mataji. And I've had the fortune of tasting some of the food that you cook. And I can tell you one thing that uh, if the Adi Shakti enjoyed your food, then what kind of a cook you must be. Amazing, amazing. And, but now this question is for you, uh, who is got all the light in him from the mother herself, and a beautiful family settled nicely in the US now. What do you see Sage Yoga of those times and after Shimadaji took her samadhi? How have things moved? Is it in the same manner as she would have wished things to go, or is there some kind of work that needs to be done by maybe few of us who have the knowledge of how to put things right? I don't know. I don't know. I'm just a question.
I think this is a very relevant topic. You know, I think I'll give this grace to people. And Shimati used to say, I hope you won't do to me what the others have done to the other incarnations. And then she said, from outside, nobody can harm Sahaja Yoga. It's only people from inside. And people have to be cognizant of that aspect. When one hears of these fights going on at Nirmal Dham,
Hmm.
Nirmal Dham is nobody's Jagir. It is a place of Sri Adi Shakti. How dare you? How dare you is the word. And if you've taken that dushahas, then you better correct it. Because the punishment which could come your way from the deities, you won't even know what to do. It could impact not only you, but your families in totality. So, one of the things of a Sahaja Yogi is you must be humble, must be very, very humble, knowing in whose presence one is standing or sitting. Your fortress is nirvicharita. And that also is not good enough because she said, कि जब तक आप, unless you're in nirvikalpa, you will be punished. Thing which she's told all of us. I think a lot of people want to do the right thing in spreading Sahaja Yoga. But Sahaja Yoga is not just numbers. And she said many point of having so many useful people, useless people. Just a few good ones is what you need. So Sahaja Yogis have to grow into their depth. The depth is inside. It doesn't matter what somebody thinks of you or doesn't think of you. You know, you're not playing to the masses. And one has seen that, for example, when you go to some pujas, even in Delhi, you've got 20,000 people sitting there, whatever it is. You go to Ganpati Pule, you've got another 15, 20, 25,000 people sitting over there. But the vibrations are not like that. I remember the early days in Delhi, and we would go to, there used to be in people's homes. Uh, we used to have the thing at Niku's house. And then later they had a little community area where we used to have meetings. Commander Verma's house, the vibrations were tremendous. Uncle Subramaniam's house, I tell you, used to walk out like you had taken a shower inside. You were just bathed in vibrations. That is what's important. All this shosha, all that is rubbish. It's worth nothing. Of course, offering flowers at her shrine, keeping it clean, all that is relevant. But becoming that, we have to become those flowers which can be offered at the holy feet of our mother. That is really what needs to happen, whether it's in India, it's in the US, whether it's in UK, whether it's Europe, it's anywhere. That is what has to happen. So the essential part of it is that embrace that chastity and that purity and that innocence and that joy of a child. We have to manifest that. It's no longer time of talking about it. It's great to talk about it. A lot of people talk about a lot and people get very impressed. I've seen that. But are you that? Are you emitting that? Are you reflecting that? That is the point. And what is your gauge of knowing anything is your vibrations. That's the single most dynamic tool that Shimaji has given all of us by which we can gauge anything. And that is what we have to go to. So unless you are deep inside means that you're connected to her, you're one with her, then what you're giving out is also what is hers. Then it's not you. On the flip side, you just want to be, acha chalo rath nikal do, phir ek parade nikal do, phir ye kar do, phir wo kar do. That is not representing her. People are looking and saying, okay, what is this drama they're doing? I mean, people don't understand it because people aren't idiots. But when they can feel it, this is the same way as we felt what we felt from her. Then they're like, this is valid. This is the place. What has brought us to Sahaja Yoga, what made us stay with Sahaja Yoga is the experience, that experience of divinity, which only she could give. But now, through us as her instruments, that has to happen through everywhere. I was told that there was a gentleman in India, I believe he was some leader or whatever it was, and he said, "Ke, acha Shimaji ki photo sabko de do, bhala ho jayega." What bhala is this? अच्छी चीजें हो जाएंगी. Somebody said to me, उसकी भैंस बीमार थी, भैंस ठीक होगी. I mean, really? Get a vet, let the vet attend to her. The photo is not supposed to cure bhans and something. It's supposed to cure us internally, innately for eternity. That's what it is. To become that. Sanjay, in 1998, I guess I went on a little bit of an ego trip and Shimaji corrected me for that. I'm so grateful that she did it because it brought me to think that what people think in your Sahaja Yoga, you're some kind of a leader, is all rubbish. There were no leaders. You know that. She used to change them like this, like this, like this. There was no such thing. And she said, this is such a joke. And why don't people understand that? It is becoming that. It's manifesting that. That is her work. Then give it to people, then spread it, because now you're actually spreading her vibrations because you're just her instrument. It's flowing through you and it's going wherever it has to go. And people are seeing actually a Sahaja Yogi in action. That really is what it is. So I think a lot of good things are happening. Like I think in a lot of countries, even in the US, they started the 21 days online meditation. So they're using technology to that benefit. But one of the challenges with that is the people who come online, they want to stick online. Or unko kaho ke please come to the center, they just don't want to do it. So how do you move it forward? This is a much more dynamic thing. So I think the next step is now finding solutions to some of these new situations that are coming up. Also, I would say to them that when Shimaji did the pujas, she had a particular format she followed. We're not Hindus, nor are we Christians, nor are we Sikhs, nor are we that. We are the essence of everything. That is what a Sahaja Yogi is. So why are you trying to bring, Hinduism into it, or somebody is Islamic, so there has to be an Islamic part of it. There has to be a Christian part of it. There has to be a Sikh part. There's nothing like that. It is the way of Shri Adi Shakti Mataji, Shri Nirmala Devi, because she is the totality of all the incarnations there. So I heard of some people starting this Karwa Chauth in Sahaja Yoga. It's totally nishad. Shivaji said very clearly that the only vrat that a young girl can do is before marriage. And then she said, wo, she, Parvati did to get a husband like Lord Shiva, but he's a very difficult person to manage. So all this rubbish, please don't bring it into Sahaja Yoga. You have no business to do that. It is what it is. Accept it the way it is. I'll see people, you go to someplace and every 2 minutes, every second, they're giving you a laddu Jai Shivaji, giving you a laddu Jai Shivaji. You don't have to do that. आपके अंदर से वो आना चाहिए in the way you presented someone. You're doing it with that dignity, with that grace of a Sahaja Yogi. You don't have to keep doing this. Every 2 minutes, they're doing an announcement, Jai Shivaji. Say it with that dignity and grace of a Sahaja Yogi. Let it come through it, emit. People go like crazy. I would even say this, if you see any photograph of Shimaji in pujas, on her right hand, she would always put the cross. That is Lord Christ. Left hand and on her feet were the swastik. She never put the Omkar. Om is something when we wrote for our mantras, but the symbols were always of the swastik and of the cross. You tell me which one of you, whether you're Hindu, Muslim, would have got their realization without the incarnation of Sri Ganesha as Lord Christ, where he went through crucifixion to save us. So what's your problem? What's your problem? I mean, I'm like, who are you? How dare you? When she's established certain things, stick with it. You don't have to think about it. You're not so smart. You don't know the divine laws. She taught them herself. Accept them. Any document that she put together, why do you have to change it? Why? I mean, do you go editing? I mean, Paul did the editing of the Bible and what a mess he created. That Muwayya and that Abu Bakr did the editing of the Quran and what a mess they created. God knows what these priests did with the Gita and so many other of our scriptures to give themselves relevance and importance. Why are they important? When the incarnation has herself told, then stick what she has said. I'm a vegetarian. There's no vegetarianism in Sahaja Yoga. But if you don't like meat, that's okay. But, you don't have to be a vegetarianism. I mean, Sri Ram was a Kshatriya. He went in the forest. He didn't tell you, कि हाँ मैं शिकार करने जा रहा हूँ या करने. But he probably did. So what's your problem? There's evidence that Guru Nanak asked Mardana to go and cook meat for him. We used to cook meat for Shrimanji every meal. But there were times when she said, Acha, main kuch nahi kha rahi. Because she's a total master. On the flip side, she said, ये सारे भूत मुझे खाने पड़ते हैं, तो अगर मैं मीट नहीं खाऊंगी तो कैसे होगा? So you have to understand that part of it. She ate hamburgers. I'm saying this to you quite clearly. Every morning when we served her breakfast, we would serve her cold cuts and all the rest of it. So embrace what the incarnation did. And I'm saying this because otherwise posterity will not know it. One of the Shimaji taught, first thing she taught me was yakhni palau, which was what she made when she went as a bahu to her sasural. And Sasipi told me that she made the yakhni palau and then she was the talk of the family. Ke bahu ka wo yakhni palau dekha tumne? Bahu ko tum mile ho? And this is the Graha Lakshmi part of Shimaji, that in her early years, early time of being married, she, was in this caste family. The women never paid attention to them. Nobody asked them to pay attention to them. They didn't go to a parlor or anything like that. They couldn't even leave their homes. They were just busy cooking, cleaning, taking care of the kids, taking care of the men of the house. And their feet had cracks in them. The heels had cracks on them. And I remember Sasipi saying that, she won over everybody. And what she did was she took ghee and she put some saffron in it. And without anyone asking her to do it, she massaged the feet of these ladies. They'd never had anyone even look at them. And here is somebody, the new Bahu, who's supposed to be a Christian with this big bindi on her forehead, who's massaging her feet. Guess what happened? The whole family was won over, and Shimaji didn't have to do any of these things. You tell any of these girls in Sahaja Yoga, go and take care of your in-laws, and they'd be like, oh my God, don't need to do that. So on the flip side, when I've heard of young brides being tortured by their sasural walas, as you might call in India, I'm like, how can you do that? You're a Sahaja Yogi. Shimaji said कि जब नई बहू घर में आए ना, तो उसका स्वागत होना चाहिए, उसका आदर होना चाहिए, उसको इतना प्रेम दो कि उसको अपना घर याद नहीं आए. How can somebody do that to a young girl? On the flip side, how can a young girl, when she goes into a new family, be rude to her in-laws? It's a balance between the two. I mean, Sahaja Yoga is supposed to be this place of harmony where we want the whole world to come. But if we don't show it and we don't live our lives like that, then it shows. How can you do that? So, I mean, to your point, I would say it's a complete surge, is complete. In one platter, Shimaji gave the whole thing to all of us and said, enjoy. But in the enjoyment, to get to the enjoyment, you have to do this deep cleansing inside. And that doesn't just mean techniques, ऊपर से नीचे कैम्फरिंग की, कैंडलिंग की, फिर ये किया, फिर वो किया. नहीं, बैठो and let Shri Param Chaitanya just fill you so that it's just flowing through you. We are the instruments. If this instrument is not working, how can Sahaja Yoga work? It's not possible. So we have to embrace our responsibilities. We have to embrace our diversity and inclusivity because we are one. Sanjay, you're part of me, I'm part of you.
Yes.
So how can we be separate? So how can you even come up with the idea that, in order to spread Shimaji's message to her photograph, so we'll remove it? How can such an idea even be accepted by anybody? But people have done that, no?
Yeah.
And when you objected to it, you were the bad guy. So I said, I don't care. I said, I learned from her. Without her, it doesn't exist. So what are you trying to do? Care. Through misadventures and through learning, you come back to square one.
Yeah, Manish, Shri Mataji had once told me very clearly, you've done so many bhajans now, why don't you make films? Because that is the best way to go. Because you will be there or not there. This will be there always to be seen by people. So put that in its primary form that I have given to you.
Yeah.
And I tried to do that. I'm trying to do that, but that's got such a stiff opposition. I mean, I was so shocked how I was opposed when I was making these. But then she's been showering awards to the films that I've made. And it just goes to show that mother is happy. That's all that matters.
At the end of the day, that's all that matters. And, I was just, reflecting the other day. And I said, I've done so much, even in my personal life. Sanjay, I've achieved a lot. I run one of the largest food service programs in the US, serving over 600,000 meals a day, uh, business of over um, 500 million. And a business which, before I took it over, was always in the loss. I know the basics. I've been in the business a long time, but the biggest thing is that I have the backing of Shri Adi Shakti. So on day one, when I took over, I just put it to her feet and I said, Shrimaji, I leave it to you. And guess what? I've been profitable every year for the last 7.5 years. So how does that happen? When this tremendous force is there, she'll take care of it. Why are you worried? You know, I mean, so to your point, and so I came to the thing, ke, acha, ab kaise kya karo? What do you do? So I said, she's given me this talent of cooking. So I was like, now I'm going to start doing cooking sessions along with meditation so that, and it has a meaning because if you give vibrated food to people, the dharma gets corrected. The dharma gets corrected. The dharma gets corrected means your sushumna can start working. You can go on the Mahalakshmi path, your movie, right? And I said, I'll do it. And so the other thing which I decided was all these things that Shimaji taught me, I'm going to put them on video and let everyone enjoy it. Let the world enjoy it because she taught. We did some cooking sessions with with Kalpana Didi, and she created this nice app so people already have access to it. But one can now, do some of those recipes and many others that she gave me. But that even Sadhna Didi is an excellent cook. So I mean, some of these things are knowledge that if it's not propagated, it will go away. But the biggest thing about food is that you give. You give of yourself. You put all your love into it for somebody else to enjoy. And your biggest enjoyment is when the other person is enjoying it. That's it. That's the fulfillment of it. Same way with Sahaja Yoga. The fulfillment is when somebody else gets it and it's flowing and you feel it and they feel it. What else do you need?
Absolutely. It's like you don't need big audiences or numbers. You're connected to the mains
Yeah.
and you're flowing. And that's what I'm feeling with you today in this wonderful conversation with my dear brother Manish Singh from the US. And I have got my Grail Lakshmi here to wish you. She's here.
Jai Shri
Aradhana, how are you? Both Hero and I were waiting for
So
you to
nice
come
to
here.
hear. So nice to.
We were waiting
Yes,
for you to come here, but jab bhi hoga, so hoga.
yes,
Yes,
yes. And
inshallah.
you always know you have a home with us. Your room is ready. Just tell us when you're
ठीक है.
coming.
अगली बारी मैं आऊंगा तो I will tell you, but I will tell you this
Huh.
that every time I came to Delhi, and I come to Delhi every year or 2 years. So
Oh,
I
we
have
didn't
been on the
even know
lookout for
this.
you when I go to Nirmal Dham and all these places,
Okay.
and even to the Kutab temple. But for whatever reason, one never
Yes,
saw
yes,
you. Um, of course, Dr. Nigam is a very old and a dear friend of mine.
yes.
And, so one always meets up with him and all that. Time is always short when you're in Delhi. I
I
mean,
can.
we come for maximum maybe 2 weeks. You might go to Vashi for, a few days and then you're in Delhi for a few days. And before you know it, it's time to go back. But hopefully,
We
if
will meet.
all things
Inshallah,
are
we will
good,
meet.
health is
Yes,
good, in
yes.
next 2-3 years, then I look to retire. Sanjay, I'm 68 now. So,
Good, good.
sometimes
And good
people
to
have
see
asked
you
me,
still.
when are you retiring? And I'm
Ah,
like, yeah, when the time is there, I will retire. Probably I'm not ready for it. Um,
ah,
so
I'm on my 70th now. In the next
you're on your
few days,
70th?
I'll be 70. So, very nice. Today, we have had Brother Manish with us from the US, giving us some lots of great talk and information about Sahaja Yoga, Shri Mataji, and how we need to count our blessings and share them to the whole world, all the love that we have within us. So let's all today pray to Shri Mataji that we all support each other, love each other, and let Sahaja Yoga grow as what she wanted. And God bless you, Manish. We will come back again with another talk sometime soon. And thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you. Thank you.
Bless you, Jai Shri
Jai Shri
Mataji.
Mataji. And I hope,
Yeah.
these things, people, when they go to the center or they go to for a puja, the focus should be on the vibrations, on pleasing the goddess,
Yes.
not on anything else. And I would really ask the Indian centers that Shrimati had a particular format in which she did the pujas. Please stick with it. Don't try to do your own thing, फिर घंटी आ जाएगी. ये सब कुछ शुरुआत में होता था. ये सब खत्म हो गया with the advent of the Adi Shakti. You don't have to start doing all these things.
All things.
Yeah.
I hope we get some knowledge and some
Jai Shri Mataji.
sense out of this. Thank you so much. God bless. Jai Shri Mataji. Thank you. We can leave.
Bye.
Adi.